The overhead squat is one of these movements that people see on the internet and they go, wow, that's really cool, but I'll never be able to do that. Like, that's just not something I'll ever be able to do. And it's like, why are you counting yourself out before you've even tried? So let's try. It's okay. It is not an easy movement, right? Like, the overhead squat is a complex movement. It requires some prerequisite strength and mobility. But if you put in the time and the effort and you have patience, you could do an overhead squat. Like, it's not an unreasonable lift for a person to get. So how do we get there? Let's talk about it. There's a few prerequisites. Like I said, you need to be able to do a regular squat, right? We're not doing a 100-meter sprint before we learn how to walk. So learn how to do a regular squat. Your heels need to stay flat on the floor, your knees driving over your toes, your chest staying upright. It's okay if it comes forward a little bit, like my chest definitely comes a little bit farther forward than some people, just based on my anatomy. But we're mostly upright and we're able to get low, and that's not like an uncomfortable position for me to be in. Second thing we really need is shoulder mobility. If when you're pressing, you're out here like this, and this is where our mobility ends, it's going to be a lot harder to drop into a squat with that. So we want to get our overhead mobility in really tight. This is where we want to be. So when we do drop into an overhead squat or single arm overhead squat, that doesn't feel unreasonable. We're not like losing and the bell's not going outwards, because that makes it much more difficult and puts a lot of strain on your shoulders. And we need to brace our core. We're putting weight over our head, right? And that's going to automatically require and engage your core. But if you let that go, you have weight over your head, right? You're going to just come forward, you're going to lose control of the weight. We don't want to do that either. So here's how we build all of those things. Start from the top down with our shoulders. We do shoulder cars, controlled articular rotation, shoulder mobility. We can do strength in those shoulders that do also help with the shoulder mobility. Windmills and arm bars are a great way to do that. Planks are also good for everything. I know for core stability, nobody wants to do a plank, but I love a plank for that. Or a rack squat, building the stability, keeping your chest up with weight in front of you or even over you. Then we need to work on our squat and hip mobility. Hip cars, once again. Doing hip clocks, which is another lift mobility exercise sequence that I really enjoy, and doing like things like squat twists, where we're down low and able to like hold this squat depth comfortably and feel solid in that position and get really comfortable and move our body in the squat depth, in the depth of your squat. So we're going to start when you're learning how to do it. You should be able to do a great rack squat, like I said. Really good overhead strict press, ending with your bicep next to your ear. And if you're not up for an overhead squat, do an overhead lunge, which is a much easier variation of some sort of overhead movement. And it gives you that practice of pushing up and standing up tall while maintaining that overhead lockout position. And you have to be okay with kind of sucking at it for a second. With anything that's complex and like not a beginner movement, you might not look good when you're first doing it. I know when I first started doing it, I looked like a goof. I didn't get the depth. I was like reaching for the floor. Sometimes I was like rotating and squatting like this. Like there are a lot of videos of me looking very bad at the overhead squat. And what you're comparing yourself to is my 8 years of experience of doing overhead squats. You're not even been practicing overhead squats for 8 years. I have, so of course they're gonna look good. And it would be weird if they looked really bad, because I've been practicing them for 8 years. So take the time to build and allow your body to adapt and connect with your body to find those limits and work on them. Find those limits, practice them, get better at them, and enjoy the process of dialing in the skill. Because once you start to enjoy the process of dialing in difficult technique, It's all fun. The whole strength training thing becomes a whole lot more fun. So enjoy. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below.